And I'm wondering if there are keys that you view in yourself or that you've seen in other coaches that allow you to have a positive experience, but then also still reach high level goals, whether that's get through gymnastics safely or a college scholarship or go to the Olympics. Like, I'm just curious your thoughts on what you feel needs to happen.
Well, I think that my coaching experience actually stems from my gymnastics experience. And, I was treated away as an athlete that I didn't like. And, but I love the sport so much. So I started coaching when I was 13. And with that, I was like, remember how I felt when I was that little girl and, craving my coach's attention and not getting it and not being good enough. And, how it kind of, it almost tried to suck the love of gymnastics away, but like my passion for gymnastics was just too strong. And so at a very early age in my coaching career, I decided that I was just going to be better. I was going to be more loving and more kind and make sure that it was focused around the love of gymnastics and not so much the success of gymnastics, because I was very talented when I was little, but was I super successful? No, but I still love gymnastics so much. And I felt like I could nurture that in other athletes.
Product of the sport being so perfectionist based, whereas like there's always something to work on, there's always an improvement? Or do you think that's more of the individual themselves who maybe need a moment of self-reflection on a compliment sandwich or looking at the positive as well?
Well, I do think that our sport by nature is one of criticism. We start from, now even in the elite world, we start from a 10 in execution, and then you get stuff taken away. And very rarely do you actually get credited for things. So it is the nature of the beast per se, which makes our jobs as coaches much more difficult, because we have to figure out how to explain to a child, this is what you're losing when you make this error, and turn that into a positive, constructive criticism to get them to want to eliminate the error instead of fear of rejection and negativity.
Yeah, that is an art, right? That is kind of the art of coaching, is how do you skew and make things positive and progressive, but then also how do you still continue to make them feel good about their gymnastics, right? How do you make sure it's like, there's a fine line between constructive criticism and just being mean, right? There's a difference.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The only way you can make those hard decisions is if you have confidence in yourself, in your own self-esteem, and your values are aligned to know that the performance that Simone has is not going to equal if you're a good coach or not, or if you're a good person or not. And I think you mentioned like the fear of social judgment and the social rejection. I think a lot of coaches have not had that harder conversation with themselves about what do I stand for, and tying their self-worth to their integrity as a coach. And they lay it on the athlete. And so one, that's unfair to the athlete, but two is like, you don't have the stomach to take some of those harder decisions. So I know, what are your thoughts on that conversation?
Well, it's interesting because we're working on a chapter in my book right now about the 2013 U.S. Classics, when we ended up scratching her, on the last event. And I'm going through it and reading it. And, people thought that we scratched her because she wasn't having a good showing. And, she wasn't going to win and all of this. And so I did get some kickback on that. But the reality of it is, we ended up scratching the last event because when she went to go warm up the last event, she got lost in the air. And I'd never seen her get lost in the air like that before. And she landed really hard in her warm up. And I knew right then and there that she had a very good chance that she could injure herself. And it was like, again, what's the end game? Is the end game for you to do all around at classics? It wasn't even a matter of winning classics at this point, because she had already had a couple of falls. But, it was, this is your safety here. And we've got to pull you and get back to the drawing board and figure out what the problem is. And then when it came to national team stuff, we had made the decision early on that we were going to take the stuff that was useful to us and use it. And everything else that we didn't find useful to us in our training program, we threw away. So we never felt the pressure, or I mean, I can't speak for Simone, but I never felt the pressure as a coach to follow a strict guideline of what maybe somebody on national staff was telling us if I didn't think it was going to benefit Simone.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was me knowing my athlete well enough. And that's because I never train my athletes in the do as I say just because, like all of my athletes have been a part of their training. They've had decision-making abilities in their training. So, to take an example of when we declined going to camp, that's a big no-no. Like, who declines going to camp? But I knew it wasn't going to be right for Simone's state of mind to go back to that camp. Then we realized there would probably be repercussions for it. But our choice was, okay, well, we're going to go back home and we're going to train. And it just so happened that, worked out that the next meet she showed up to, she won. So it showed that it was the right decision for her. It might not have been the right decision for another athlete. Another athlete might have done better getting back into national team camp. But that's where the communication and the relationship with your athlete is so important.
If you follow what your coach did and they follow what their coach did, you're 20 years back in terms of information. And I don't know, do you actively try to seek out new informations, new opinions, or is it based on just like the feel of kind of what's going on with your athletes?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's mostly feel and gut instinct. But I like to educate myself. I like to educate myself on all sides of a topic, all different kinds of techniques, because there isn't just one straight line. Gymnastics and athletics in general, it's going to meander in and out depending on what's best for each athlete. So it's important to know more than one way, because if you're not getting through to an athlete one way, it's not because they don't want to do it. It's that they're not understanding it. These athletes show up for endless hours of practice because they want to achieve, they want to be successful. Right. So what a lot of coaches do who are very, on a narrow path and very narrow visioned, I'll say, not narrow minded, but narrow visioned, they get frustrated. The coaches get frustrated that the athlete isn't understanding it, and they think it's something wrong with the athlete instead of something wrong with the approach.
What is your advice to people who are kind of in that situation of like, I realize I made a mistake, I realize we made a mistake, and I want to do something different? What is your opinion on what's the first few steps of actually changing your gym's culture or your own coaching practices?
I think that the very first step is listening. I think to have a very open mind when you're talking and questioning, your athletes and your parents, and have them be really honest. And you need to be able to take the criticism. I mean, I've taken some criticism from athletes and parents in my life. I am far from perfect, but I've always taken what they've said and, tried to apply. And so that's a really big thing. I think that prior to me, there weren't a lot of super successful coaches who I was told I was too nice to be successful. And like, I always thought that was such a weird statement. Like, what is too nice? Like, I care for my kids and my athletes, and, I care about their opinions and their feelings. That's too nice. And that's somehow going to make me not successful because I'm not mean enough. So there weren't enough, like, I didn't have anybody to look up to as a coach and say, I want to be that coach.
Right.
I'm hoping that there are some young coaches out there who want to be the kind of coach I was, and they just need some mentorship. And, I have some coaches that I'm mentoring and I really love it. And they're enthusiastic and they're open-minded, and they're also open to criticism. And I say, listen, when you're doing this, I saw this happen with your athlete. I saw their body language change. I saw their facial expression change. And you probably didn't even realize that you were doing it. You didn't realize you were having a negative impact because your intentions were good. But, words really matter. So
I think that's so important that people, coaches, parents really work hard to build that intrinsic motivation and be like, this is your journey. Did you consciously have to build that with Simone and other athletes, or did it kind of come naturally as they work through your gym?
I think it's different for each kid, honestly, because of whatever their personality is. Right. With Simone, it was all about fun in the beginning, and it had to be fun, and I had to keep it fun and exciting and interesting. And there was definitely a shift in 2013 when she decided that she was going to, she still wanted to have fun, but instead of just being a star, she knew she wanted to be a champion. And she made a shift then. But it was all her. Up until, honestly, probably right before Rio, even her family and me as her coach, I would say, they would tell her, you can stop whenever you want. We're here to support you. When she was going through a rough patch, we would say, this is you. This is your thing. We're just here to support you, to teach you, to guide you, to support you financially, get you to practice, whatever. But you're the one that has to do the work. You're the one that has to have the dream and the goal. And, I would tell her all the time, it's not about me, it's about you. And I don't know. Honestly, I hate when people ask me dates and stuff because it really all blurs together, especially once she started homeschooling. And, at that point she was doing 30 hours total, but so it was 2 3-hour practices.
Yep.
Sorry, take that back. Yes, 2 3 hours. So three hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, 5 days a week.
Got it.
So I have never felt it necessary to train more than 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the body needs time to rest. I kind of feel like one day off is for your body to rest, and the other day is for your brain to rest and for you to be a kid. I think that that's really important. However you want to break it up.
Yeah.
There is no reason for these kids to be in the gym all the time. To me, that's just like about control. Your arms are dead. Your legs are dead because you've got to squeeze them so hard. Bars is so physically demanding on the body, and people think it's not because, they're just hanging. No, they're not. It's a lot of work. I remember Simone telling me that the thing that would get the most tired on bars was her legs.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, there's a really geeky conversation about, we had someone who specializes in like cardio and energy systems. And they talked a lot about how people misconstrue that your arms work so hard and your legs do nothing. But yeah, you're squeezing your legs super hard, but those muscles in your legs are working hard to clear the tiredness feeling of your upper body. So it's pretty common for someone to feel really wobbly legs after a bar set.
Mm-hmm.
Fun geeky fact there. My last question is, if you had the eyes and ears of everybody, right? Some magical wand you could wave with the NGBs, the coaches, parents, what do you think would be the most important thing for them to hear, given we're going to change quite a bit moving forward in the next 5 years?
I think it's about listening. Like, I know everybody's concerned about the pendulum swinging too far the other way, but a pendulum is exactly that. It's got to swing in order to come back to the middle. So right now, I know a lot of coaches and club owners and things like that, NGBs even feel like they don't have control. But what it is that these athletes and parents are speaking up now, and it's going to swing back to the middle, and we are going to find our middle ground, but it's going to take a lot of listening. You've got to actually hear what people are saying.
Yes.
And make the changes that need to be made. And I think the only way that that's going to happen is through education.